Good morning. First, just gratitude for having me here. First, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a practitioner. I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I have started several companies. The very first company that I've started is a cybersecurity company called Radically Open Security, which I oddly enough gave away for €1 to a foundation because I wanted to be the steward of the company and not the owner. I also started a startup incubator called Nonprofit Ventures, where we have incubated roughly 80 startups across 6 cohorts. Our demo day is going to be in a few weeks from now. And we are teaching steward ownership and new economic thinking in this incubator. I'm also right now lecturing on similar topics at the University of Amsterdam Business School, and I'm also right now busy founding my third company, which is a steward-owned VC fund that will be funding open source, fully steward-owned open source tech companies to build a digitally sovereign tech ecosystem for Europe. So I'm talking a lot about steward ownership. What is this? So steward ownership is using legal tools to embed stewardship into your company. We're doing this essentially in a similar fashion to the parable of the talents. Of course, the men in the parable, they were stewards of the master's money. They did not own that money. And what we're doing is we're ensuring that if shareholders can extract value out of a company through their ownership, that they do not also have stewardship, or in other words, they don't have operational and governance control over the company as well. So what does all of this have to do with artificial intelligence? Well, look, quite simply, shareholder behavior drives companies. If you want evidence of this, I would suggest you look at Meta. And of course, considering that with the behavior of Mark Zuckerberg, he is not accountable neither to shareholders due to super voting constructions, nor to algorithms experts that have all the technology that we need to fix our artificial intelligence bias problems and to, anonymize things appropriately. And yet, Frances Haugen, the algorithms expert, decided it was more effective to drop a stack of documents at the Washington Post rather than to be able to escalate her concerns to the management of the company. So the problem here really is that if we want to reform AI, we need to address the kernel of the problem. And the heart of the problem, not just in artificial intelligence, not just in big tech, but actually in every business that we have nowadays, is usury. So what is usury? Well, it's financial extraction. So, oftentimes we think of it as predatory lending. And it's a sin in all three Abrahamic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Usury is called riba in Arabic, and it is part of the reason why in Islam they have developed such concepts as Islamic banking, Sharia finance, and also very interestingly, something called the Waqf, which is a Islamic religious trust in which they create companies that, oddly enough, are owned by Allah. That's an interesting concept. So in Catholicism, the concept of usury is very well established, and several of our church fathers wrote extensively about the topic. St. Augustine called usury theft, and St. Ambrose wrote a huge rant about usury in the Tobia. Similarly, also, our angelic doctor, St. Thomas Aquinas, also wrote extensively about usury in question 78 of the Secunda Secundae of the Summa Theologiae. And he basically said that usury was essentially, or charging interest was basically selling something that does not exist. And this is a sin against commutative justice. So it was very clear, about usury until in 1745, Pope Benedict XIV wrote a papal bull that was called Vix Preveni. And in that papal bull, he reaffirmed usury teachings, but then he also said that there are additionally some titles that are not intrinsic to the loan contract that create certain occasions when it is okay and legitimate to charge interest. So scholastic thinkers and St. Thomas explored exactly what these extrinsic titles are. And they came up with 4 different kinds. The first extrinsic title is called Domnum Emergens. And this is basically the real cost of running your business or your investment vehicle. In other words, if I pay for rent on the building or salaries to my employees, it's okay and legitimate to charge a little bit of interest to cover those incurred costs. The second extrinsic title is called Lucrum Cessans, and this is opportunity cost. And Aquinas's response to this one was, prove it. Prove to me that you could have earned more by making other investments. Of course, this is difficult, so this one needs to be treated with caution. The third extrinsic title is called Pena Conventionalis, and this is basically late fees. So in other words, if I make a loan and you repay it late and I incur actual costs or damages, then I am allowed to charge a bit of interest to cover those incurred costs. However, that doesn't give you a blanket license to just charge whatever you like in the name of late fees. And then the fourth extrinsic title is called Periculum Sortis, and this is charging for risk. And this one, St. Thomas was completely against. And this actually was the essence of charging for something that does not exist, charging for the mere passage of time, which of course is really God's and not ours. And Periculum Sortis, though, the problem was that when Pope Benedict XIV made this kind of these exceptions that should be exercised with prudence, this became a license. And this eventually led to financialization, which led to hedge funds and to private equity and LBOs and basically the entire financial system as we know it. And the problem is most people do not directly connect financialization with usury, but we need to be very intentional about laying this connection and clarifying this in the church. So, after all of this happened, eventually usury was even taken out of canon law. Usury was still present in the 1917 code, but in the 1983 code, it was eventually completely removed and instead just implied when talking about stewardship and the common good and other such topics. Now, what can the church do about this? Well, first of all, she needs to reclaim her prophetic voice about usury. So the first thing that would be nice to do is if our Holy Father could please address usury once again in canon law, we can basically provide further guidance upon Pope Benedict XIV's teachings to perhaps provide some specific guidance about these 4 kinds of extrinsic titles. Additionally, I think we could also pay some more attention to things like asset locks, steward ownership, corporate governance, and look, if we can't get this into magisterial teachings, I mean, look, the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences is here hosting this gathering. And of course, it would be absolutely wonderful if you could augment your existing documents that are already there, like Mensurum Bonum for Finance and Vocation of a Business Leader, and please write a new document addressing these topics. So with that, I would just like to finish up by bringing us to the parable of the unjust steward. Of course, this is a very confusing parable for many people in which a fund manager actually created a small kind of debt jubilee. And oddly enough, the master had commended him for being shrewd. he was reducing interest and he was eliminating some of these extrinsic titles. And I think that we too might need to think like this steward, and perhaps we too are being called to shrewdness.